Hello and welcome to the Mobile Accessible Games interview series. I'm your host, Aaron Spelker. Mobile Accessible Games is a group that's dedicated to all things about mobile accessible gaming. And through our interview series, we interview game developers, accessibility influencers, as well as accessibility advocates. And this week we have a game developer. His name is Ben Deitch. He is the developer of Iktah, which is a great RPG idle resource management game. And we're going to spend the next little while talking about that game and his background as well as his development. So, Ben, welcome to the interview series.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So, Ben, I always like to start the interview series just kind of turning it over to you for a couple of minutes, just to tell the community about yourself. Who are you? And any kind of a little background about yourself.
Sure. Oh gosh, let's see. So for game development, I probably started 10 to 15 years ago making action script games in Flash,
Okay.
and then did a lot of development, professional development, and then I actually was lucky enough I got to teach Android development for about 3 years, and then now I've got to make Iktah, and that's really what I try to spend most of my time on these days, at least.
So when you go back to starting with Flash, I mean, is that even a thing that exists anymore, or it's just like the gaming developing, making games is kind of past that is like albums, or 8-track tapes. It's just not something that is done anymore.
It's pretty much something that's not done anymore. There was a minute where there was a product called Adobe Air that would let Flash games run on mobile, and you could do some sort of stuff like that. And I really haven't checked in to see if that's gone anywhere since then. But since I'm not aware of it, I have to guess that it hasn't. So I think for the most part, Flash is dead.
Yeah, okay. And so if you're, a person who's like, hey, I want to make a game, and you used to be like, I'd make it in Flash, what is the go-to thing now? Is that kind of like, the Mac Swift? Is that kind of where people make games now, or is there other programs?
I think most people make games with Unity, but I made this game with Flutter, and I'd really recommend that if you're making a game that doesn't have a ton of moving pieces animation wise, if you're not having enemies move around and bullets and rockets and stuff flying over the screen, then if it's more UI based, like an incremental or idle game usually is, then Flutter is awesome because it's just a cross-platform UI tool.
Okay.
And so using just the UI tool to make the game works fine.
So if you have static images, static text, in a standard structure like Iktah has, that Flutter works well for that.
Oh yeah, and I mean there are animations. So some of the fishing spots, well, actually all the fishing spots have animations for the water to show that it's kind of watering, and those animations are just a timer that loops by one each frame, and I just have 3 frames, and it's that same 3 static images, but shown and repeat, and it's not any more complicated than that. There's no other libraries I'm bringing in to achieve animation or anything like that.
So let's take a second here and have you explain to people the game Iktah, what it is, and what you're trying to do or achieve when you play this game.
Really, what I want to give people is a sense of exploration and a sense of learning something new. Just when I find something that is surprising to me, especially about the Pacific Northwest, which is where the game is loosely based, I try to incorporate that because I just think it's just so cool to find some new piece of information. So, for example, carpentry, the tool that you use for carpentry is an adze, which is like an axe, except it's you take the blade of the axe and it goes in a different direction, and you use it kind of overhead down onto something. Like if you were trying to hollow out a dugout canoe, you'd use an adze to hollow it out. Would be one way to do it. You could also burn it to hollow it out or something else. But just introducing the fact that this tool exists, because I've never heard of it until I was researching this game. And then when I saw it, it's like, that's perfect. That's exactly the kind of experience that I want to give to other people is like, oh, cool, here's this thing that I didn't know about. Just a lot of those little moments is what I'd really like to get out of it. I know there's a lot more, but that's what I like.
Yeah, I mean, at the base, the game itself, as you said, you're kind of loosely in the Pacific Northwest. You start off where you have to gather all your materials, and when you gather, whether it be berries or twigs or fish or trees, whatever the case may be, you kind of gather those raw materials. Then you're able to use those raw materials by melting them down to create tools, craft tools, or build furniture or buildings or things like that. You eventually advance to where you're creating a community where you can mentor those people or build a town hall or roads or docks or library, which gives you added benefits as you kind of build up the community, and then you kind of build your own homestead where, again, kind of building that out with a bed and furniture and tables also gives you added bonuses. And then through all of that, you equip a protagonist, if you will, who then goes out and explores different locations and fights and battles different enemy types, whether it be just straight up bears and wolves or orcs or just random other bandits, things like that you kind of defeat those different locations, get different drops with different armors or quest items, which you then kind of turn in at your journal, which gives you points that you can then spend to further advance and get even greater bonuses in the various things that you're doing, whether it be gathering, crafting, or attacking. So it's kind of like this loop that you're facing where you're always kind of getting access to new locations, new things to gather, new types of trees, new fish to fish, and new tools to kind of accomplish those items as well. So it's really great self-feeding loop, if you will, of content, which it's right up my alley. Is that kind of like a good description of the game as I kind of just put it?
Oh yeah, that's a perfect description. I love that. It's really making the game really is made it clear that there's some kind of magic in that, because all those loops on their own aren't that interesting. If you just have gathering alone and you just have something and you don't do something with it, there's nothing there. But then when you put in another loop, you kind of tie in the first one, and it's not a real hard thing to tie one thing into another. But after you've tied so many things in with just that one other little tie-in or a few tie-ins, eventually it's just this tapestry, and it just ends up being way more complicated than you planned for, but it just all these little steps and it just works out.
Well, yeah, because as you said, as you weave multiple interconnections of gather this to then create that tool that then allows you to build that piece of furniture, which then allows you to put it in your home, that allows you to gather more wood or whatever the case may be. There becomes a strategy to it. Like, okay, I gotta, instead of just pressing a button, I gather stuff and then I have it. It's like, all right, well, I need to gather this first in order to be able to build this, which then will allow me to do, collect the ore I need faster. So, you kind of start gaming out what is the correct order to do this to maximize my output as I kind of move up the skill tree and get access to more and more different types of tools and resources. So it becomes a unique kind of thinking man's game as you kind of go through it. And what I really particularly like, there are other games, I don't know if like Crafting Kingdom, which is a game I really like, but you're just kind of crafting. That's all you do. This is crafting around a purpose, which is, okay, I'm going to craft, which is going to allow me to build up my community, which is going to allow me to be a better gatherer, in whether it be fishing or wood cutting or whatever else I'm trying to do. But I'm also being able to build armor and weapons so that I can go out and attack and complete these quests under the journal. So it kind of it's not only the gathering component, but there is a battle component to it. There's equipping your your protagonist with all sorts of different gear and what is going to be the best gear. I'm in the desert, maybe I should put on the desert shoes, which gives me special bonuses, or I should use a special fishing, weapon that if I'm kind of in a location where there's, I'm battling in the ocean sort of thing. So there's really just kind of like these nice things that make you think as you are playing this game. And the other thing that I love about these type of games is you're always just like one step away from something. You're always just, if I just play for 20 more minutes, I can, get to level 77 and that'll unlock something. And then I'll be able to do something with that, something that I just unlocked and can complete it through the game. So it's kind of like that one more turn, kind of like old Civilization when you're playing that. Like I just got to play for just a little bit longer and I get access to something else. And then you end up playing for 2 hours more because you got access to something else, which unlocked a whole bunch of stuff. And same with the journal, having kind of interesting, unique missions. I like the missions. It's not just straight up, go here, create this. I mean, there's kind of some uniqueness to some of the missions as well, which I like. And again, the rewards of the mission is being able to spend points to augment, how you collect things or gather things or battle things, which is all great. And then there's also just, as you said, there's this connection to the Pacific Northwest. And, like one of the ones that I just find really fun of just kind of that connection is when you're gathering for shellfish in the bay and the tides are the Pacific Northwest tides, in real time. And, you got to actually kind of, not go fishing for oysters at high tide because you're going to get basically nothing. You got to time it to be out there when it's, approaching low tide, through low tide, and slightly after low tide. That's when you're going to maximize your collection of those goods. So again, it's kind of, not just straight up gathering, but thinking about, all right, well, I can't really gather here. I want to collect a bunch of shellfish, but that's going to be in 7 hours from now. So let me think about what I want to do for the next 7 hours before I go back to collecting shellfish and get those drops that I need to get from there, whether it be pearls or whatever that you need to get to advance some mission. So I just kind of love the different types of things that you can do in the game. And then even beyond that, there's kind of I don't know what you want to call it, like a chessboard game, if you will. It's kind of a hunty board game that you play. It's also one of the missions. You got to defeat somebody 5 times at this board game, which is, again, it's just kind of something unique and different and fun to tackle. There were some unique challenges trying to do that as a fully blind person, but there is.
I was very surprised when somebody reported that as not labeled. My first thought was like, okay, I'll label it, but this seems difficult. And then I labeled it the first time, and it just was numbers 1 through whatever, and then I was like, oh, we could do better.
There is so this board game, just so you know, it's kind of like I think a 7x7 grid. You have 3 hunters. Your mission is to surround a bear so the bear can't move. Basically put the bear in checkmate. And so you got to move your 3 pieces. Every time you move one of your hunters, the bear gets to move, and you eventually got to block and pin the bear down into where the bear can't move. Now I played it and beat it when it was the time where it was labeled 1 through 20. And the thing about 1 through 20 is, 7x7 is obviously 49 squares, not 20 squares. So what the issue is not every row has squares that you can move into. So like the first row is something like, 2 squares you can't move into, 3 squares you move into, 2 squares you can't move into. That's what the first row is. And then the second row is a little different. So you had to really pay attention on that bear game. When I was doing it again, where it was just 1 through 20, and if you're in 20, it says, you can move to 16, 17, and 14. You had to kind of like pay attention to where can the bear move, but we can move to that square, what can that square move into, and then kind of really pay attention, like almost plan 4 or 5 moves ahead to get your hunters in position to then block off the bear. I think it's moved. I don't know what the current thing. There was kind of like a east-west and then a numbering system that I think you moved to. I had already beat the game by then. That seemed like it might be, I don't know if any voiceover people have beat it under that new kind of naming convention. Again, I think I might have mentioned on the Discord that we're kind of used to just straight up, column A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're kind of used to that being the naming convention to work with. And we kind of get that, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that's coming in as I'm gonna have that as an option. But then the other big thing that I really liked, at least with myself playing it, with voiceover, is there's the button now that tells you where the pieces are.
Oh, nice.
There's a button
that wasn't terrible.
It just says where all 4 pieces are, and then there's another button that you can turn off inactive spaces. So spaces that you can't interact with at the moment.
Yeah.
And that makes swipe navigation really easy because there's only like 3 spaces you can use at any time.
Right. Oh, that's good. So you don't have to swipe through the whole board to get to where you want to go to.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. So I've been playing the game, I don't know, for a month or so. And over the course of that month, I mean, you've really done a good job of listening to the voiceover community. I think you're hearing most of them, through your Discord channel where people can kind of, you have a bug section and people kind of report, hey, I'm a voiceover user and, I'm facing this issue or this isn't labeled or whatever. And you really seem to be taking that to heart and applying those pretty quickly throughout the game. Am I right in saying that's kind of where you're getting the majority of your voiceover, blind community feedback about the game?
Yeah, definitely. Most of it's coming through Discord. A few emails. I think the feedback button end game is not, somebody's mentioned that it wasn't accessible, but that's a third-party library, so I don't know that I can fix that part.
Good.
But yeah, mostly Discord for the feedback. And there's been a lot. I'm so thankful that people are telling me all this stuff because I've worked in software, you have QA people who QA stuff, and it takes a lot of time and effort for people to find bugs. So whenever somebody tells me about a bug or something that's wrong, you save me so much time not having to find it myself or figure out another way to find these things. So I'm so thankful when people tell me things like that.
So when you first create title like Iktah, is accessibility in your mind at all, or is that just something that wasn't really on your radar until someone said, "Hey, I'm blind and played your game. I'm enjoying it, but I'm having these problems." Like, was it on the radar at all?
Not at all. And the reason for that is that, at least my experience with app development, is mostly unsuccessful. So things like accessibility support or other language support or even UIs that are specialized for tablets, or something that I've started to do more recently is for the flip phones. Those screens are super skinny, so you need to have a special UI for that too. But all that sort of stuff I usually see that as a nice problem to have. And that, like, once somebody's asking for, other language support or accessibility, or I have one of those super skinny phones and all the words go off the screen, I like to have those problems. But if you do all that at the beginning, you might be doing a lot of work that's going to go nowhere because your game's not going to succeed in the first place.
Right.
But so no, that didn't start out as part of it, but the labeling is definitely something I'm going to incorporate going forward, because that's really easy to do.
So, for example, and I ran into this, everything was pretty decently labeled, but like I had something that unlocked a little later in the game. So, I'm going to spoiler here a little bit for people. A little later in the game, you get to unlock a potion management screen where you can actually manage your potions as you are kind of doing other tasks. Get things to, continuously take a potion if you're in battle or whatever. But when you were in that and you were managing the potions, that particular screen just said image 12 items. Do you want to, continuously take on or off? But you didn't know what it was because it just said image. It didn't tell you, what the item was. And I'm wondering if that's just something that, again, as you said, you can think about labeling things, and also it doesn't get caught like some other the images get caught earlier in the game because it's kind of a later in the game reveal. So maybe not too many people were mentioning it to you until some blind person got that far and said, "Oh, wait, this isn't like."
I'm almost positive that has to have been it. That just because it's somebody would have let me know if they'd hit it sooner. I like to think. But yeah, no, it's an extra step that you have to put in your process. So now when I'm developing Iktah and doing an update, I usually have, in addition to having one of those flip phone screens, a regular iPhone, and an iPad screen, all as simulators just running on the computer, so I could see the UI across those different form factors. Then you have to put it into other languages and make sure that, say German or Spanish isn't been translated as a word that's too long for this spot. And if it has, you have to fix the spot so that it can handle longer text. And then you have to flip it also into accessibility mode, which from the screen has a pretty good mode to show if things are labeled or not. But I've found that it's just okay, right? Because that's not experiencing the game through voiceover. So it's not really telling you the whole story. So like, for example, at the beginning, I didn't even know you could announce things. Like there's a pop-up that comes up from the bottom all the time for status updates.
Yes.
And for a while I was like, what am I going to do about this pop-up? It's so hard to incorporate. And then one day I was just like, I wonder if we can announce things. And I Googled it, and it's called announce. Like I just had to announce, and then it was done. So.
Oh, is that in there? So like this, just give people a reference. So like if you are, let's say, trying to craft something and you don't have the resources, a thing will pop up that says, you do not have the resources, or you do not meet the conditions. But you, as a voiceover person, you may not know that is popping up, and you might be like, why is this button not working? I'm pressing it, nothing's happening, not realizing that you're not meeting the conditions, and that it is telling you that you're not meeting the conditions, but it's telling you in a visual way. So you're saying that kind of pop up now, that kind of slides up from the bottom, is now going to announce itself as to tell you that you press a button, but now it's telling you that you don't meet the conditions.
That's correct. All of those should be read out loud unless it begins with a plus sign, which is a little hacky, but at the moment, so when you get an item from any source, it'll show plus and then that item.
Right.
And so that's just to keep it from announcing a new item every 2 seconds.
Every seconds, right. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, no,
and there might be a better way to do that, because sometimes you'll get an item, like if you have a broken item, you repair that item in your inventory, then it'll show a +1 of the new item, the new repaired item. And I think that's currently getting filtered out. So there's like a couple places that's not a good solution, but it's okay.
Well, tell me more about broken items, because I've been playing the game for a month. I don't think I've ever run into a broken item.
They're later game items.
Oh.
But there's a few items that have they're broken, and then they require a skill requirement to fix. So it's kind of a way to put an item, like a late game item, with a skill requirement, just to kind of make sure that the skills are relevant and all that.
Well, that's the other thing that I like about the game is, it really behooves you as a player to go into your inventory, actually look at each item, like, double tap on it, go into it, and see what can you do with this. Can you consume it? Can you, some things you can, take a cleaning potion and clean it and reveal,
Sure,
special recipes and things like that. So kind of, you can read things, you can learn things, there's all sorts of different things that you could do with various items, which again makes it where, you got to kind of pay attention and go in and, all right, well, collected something new. What can I do with this? A fish might not just be a fish. It might be something that you can turn into oil. You know what I mean? Like there's some interesting things to learn and figure out throughout the game. So that's what I love about this type.
Which that fish, the ulichin, which I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but that's a real fish that burns, like it just burns. That's how oily it is, and is one of the, they don't really know, but maybe one of the, or the reason that Oregon is because of a mispronunciation of ulichin.
Oh, interesting.
But
I mean, that'd be kind of like crazy to see a burning fish. It sounds
yeah,
biblical.
they're very small. They're like 6 inches long, um, but so oily that once they're out of the water, I guess you can just burn them.
Nice. Um, yeah, and I mean, going back to the protagonist of you have like a whole equipment page, where, if you're going into battle, you put on all your armor and you put on your best sword and shield and you go and fight. But if you're, deciding you're fishing, well, there's a special fishing hat, there's a special fishing ring, there's all sorts of other, uh, pieces of clothing that give you, faster collection speeds on all the different things, like all your royal equipment. So again, it's depending on where you are in the game. You go to the equipment page, you put on different pieces of equipment and different outfits to, better produce or gather the stuff that you're going to gather. So you're constantly, again, thinking in this game, and it's just what I love about it. There's so much depth, there's so much different variety to it, and each thing you're like, oh, I'm going into fight. Let me make sure I go over to my equipment, change my whole outfit out, go fight. And then you get, again, later on, you can get a whole wardrobe where you can save up to I think 9 or 12 different outfits. So
12, yeah.
12, yeah. So you can easily just switch between, things once you save them. You can quickly switch to your battle outfit and then to your fishing outfit and then to your mining outfit, depending on, what task you're doing. So it's just, again, real fun. Tell me more. We talked about this a little offline. How did you come up with this name? What is this name about? Iktah.
So Iktah is a Chinook jargon word, or Chinook Wawa. That might be the preferred term. And it means just stuff or things. And so literally the title would be Idle Things, which feels like a fun title. But also Chinook jargon, or Chinook Wawa, is the trade language of the early Oregon area, Pacific Northwest. So like when Lewis and Clark came out to the coast, they would have encountered a lot of Chinook jargon, or would have been slightly after them. But that's where the name comes from.
And so why this game? I mean, it sounds like you have some background in games. Why is it the game that you decided to create?
That's a good question. I guess there's two parts to that. The first is that I've played RuneScape, you know, a lot, and then when you get to the end of RuneScape, what is this kind of idle game turns into a very active game with lots and lots of precision clicking, and I can't do that because I have repetitive strain injuries that'll flare up if I do too much of that. So that kind of gaming is just not something I get to do anymore. And I so I kind of the kind of an idle game like that appealed to me. And then the other thing that happened is I played Exponential Idle, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that game at all.
Yeah, I don't know that one.
But
Sure, it's accessible.
I don't know if it is, but it could be because it's very simple. It's just I think it's a PhD student or somebody who's trying to discover some math thing, but essentially it's just kind of numbers go up and you hit buttons every once in a while. And I realized that game was fun and I liked it and that other people liked it. And then I kind of just came to realize that an idle game of this kind of size is something I could do and that people would maybe like.
Mm-hmm.
It's small enough that I could, not burn out doing, something this small.
So I imagine, I always think about these games, particularly these games that have a lot of modifiers. Like, okay, well, I can go collect, but if I'm wearing this particular pair of pants, I collect faster. If I wear that hat, I'm collecting faster. If I take this potion, I'm collecting faster. And then if I take that potion, then after 60 seconds or a minute or an hour or whatever, it wears off, and then I'm back to collecting at a lower rate. How is that like just like a super long, complex mathematical formula, or is there just like an easy way from a coding standpoint to kind of incorporate these modifiers into building a game like this? And then if you come up with a new idea, whatever the case may be, I don't know, you get to put
Sure.
certain lotions on your body, and now that allows you, like, is it easy to add things on, or do you have to kind of really game it all out from the beginning to kind of build the structure of what you want?
It's not too difficult to add things on. I mean, there was a time where it was more difficult, but once things are built, once you've got the groundwork set for how things work, it's not too bad. So right now there's two loops. There's the loop that happens when you're online that includes animations and stuff. And then there's the loop that happens for offline progress, which doesn't do a lot of that stuff. And so for most things, like if you're doing like a player's attack and what happens when that hits, that code is and just getting called from those two places, and then it's just one piece of code. And I can pretty easily check which weapon is doing the hitting and other stuff like that, and then modify damage or other stuff like that accordingly. Though things like on hit effects, like if you're going to have something hit and then the damage happens a little later, complicates things and stuff like that. But for the most part, things at this point aren't too hard to implement. Yeah, there's, I guess, one example of something being implemented is when you do an event. When you finish an event, like you have a dinner for people, then you get an afterglow bonus, which gives you certain effects, bonuses to your skills. And that is just a potion that starts after the event, but there's no way for you to get that potion in the game.
Right, it's just automatically consumed.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like there's a lot. Actually, there's quite a few things maybe that are potions that the player can never get. They just apply when they need to apply, because that's the best way to apply an effect to the player is through a potion.
So like, I don't know, and I don't know if this is in the game. Maybe it is, and I just haven't gone there yet. But let's say, like, you have a potion management screen. If you decided, you know what, let me create a journal mission item. If you complete this certain task, now I'm going to have a food management screen where when you're in battle, if you eat up all of your apples to heal yourself, you can select two more items, and put in cherries, and then whatever fast fish, and move through those three items when you're in battle, so that you if you use up all your first food, you have a second and then a third that gets unlocked in this kind of food management thing that
Sure.
you get later in the game. So if that was an idea you had, it's a great idea, and I'm glad you had it. Like, how complex is that to add into the game if you decided that was a thing you wanted to do? Because it's touching not only the missions, and now that's some extra points, which then may want you to put in another teaching to actually be able to spend that point. It seems like when you touch any little thing, there's kind of like a lot more to it to actually incorporate it. So like that type of idea, is that like actually not that big of a deal, or is it like, oh, everything you do is kind of long and involved?
No, that wouldn't be too big of a deal. That's kind of just, I feel that, I mean, that would involve making a new UI for the food selection area, some logic to work that all in. You need to save some user preferences for what those items are, first, second, and third. You need to have the new teaching, name for the teaching. Well, really the problem is, the biggest part of that would be that I'd want to add, it would need to replace the teaching, or I'd need to add another row of teachings for it to fit well on the teaching screen and not look like there's just one dangling by itself. But for the most part, that's not too bad. And just because those are the things I have to do for all of it. So, a lot of times I have to make a new little screen. So that's just normal stuff that I would have to do anyway.
What about, here's another thing. So there's a voiceover specific thing. So I imagine, you create a whole, inventory system. You have a series of bags and containers, and move stuff around in a visual standpoint by just kind of clicking and holding it and dragging it over to whatever location you want to do it. But quickly, or I assume fairly quickly, you found out from some blind or visually impaired user, hey, I can't do that. I can't.
Yes,
I don't know where it
absolutely.
is, and I can't drag it. So you had to build a whole way for a voiceover person to move things between different containers. Not only in the 4 bags you have on you, but also the 4 boxes that you have on you, plus the bags that you have back in your homestead. So was that complicated to do, or did you, once you knew what the problem was, you quickly figured out a way to just kind of deal with it? Like those kind of interesting challenges, I guess, that you never really thought about until, well, of course, a blind person can't find something and drag it.
Right.
That would be impossible. But kind of dealing with that, has that been a hassle, or is it kind of like an interesting, unique challenge to kind of figure out how do I deal with this?
Oh, definitely an interesting and unique challenge. I'm on I've recently learned about headers. I'm excited to
Mm,
put those to good use.
love
Uh,
headers. Yeah.
yeah, I'd dig into that. But for specifically adding the replacement to the drag and drop feature, that the buttons that go when you click on an item and there's buttons beneath it, those buttons are just a list of buttons. So really all I had to do was add to that list of buttons a bunch of new buttons that would, move it to all the different places.
Right.
And then those automatically were part of it. That's all I had to do for that. I think it was a little more complicated on the house storage management because that uses a different button, but the same concept of there's a there's just a list of buttons that appears below things, and I can add new buttons to that list, and it's not too difficult.
Here's a great, this is getting really game specific, something that's been bothering me, but maybe it's possible, maybe it's not. So I got my homestead. I got 3 bags that I can store at my house. I got two bags in there right now. So I got one empty spot. I have an empty bag, large bag, sitting in my inventory, but I don't think I can move that bag straight from my inventory on me to that location to be an empty bag in my house. I almost have to like equip it on me and then move it into the house. And is that true, what I just said?
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So that becomes just a unique challenge, because then I run into the thing of like, well, I just kind of want to move an empty bag here. Otherwise, I gotta move a bag in. Then I gotta
Yeah,
equip the
hold on.
empty
Let me write
bag,
that down. That's good. Uh,
and then it gets difficult of like, well, how do I swap the bags because now all the spots are full up, and so
yeah. So let's see. Equip storage bag from inventory.
to the house. Yeah.
Cool. Oh my! I turned my camera slightly.
So, besides, all of the amazing work that you're doing of improving, voiceover, and I'm sure other little bugs, even for those who are excited, is there new content that is going to be added to the game, or is the game, basically finished at this point, and it's really just kind of these maintenance things to dot the I's, cross the T's?
Um, Definitely more. I mean, there's lots of dotting I's and crossing T's right now. And I'm sure there will be more as language support broadens beyond languages that I recognize, and um, just because that's how it is. But I think content wise, there's a split, I think, between if people want content to be after a reset or before a reset, which if you get, I guess to preface that, if you get all 99s, you can reset the game and start over with some new bonuses, which I see as just kind of a fun thing
Mhm.
because I want the game to be what happens in your first playthrough.
Right.
So when I think about adding content, I want to do it at the end of what's currently available. Um, and there's a few enemies that I have that I've kind of put off to the side that I want to work in to some way and maybe have another boss at some point down the line and some other stuff. There's, you mentioned the food stuff. I had it. Actually, this is already in there, but it's turned off. A button so that your food box will use the next food when it runs out in combat. Like you can automatically have a food box. It'll just switch to whatever the next food is by its position and the food box, so we don't have to do anything complicated with that. And that's in there, but I want to get it in there as and my brother actually gave me this feedback, which was really cool. They said mentoring could have some more stuff going on to it. So I want to give each of the mentees like a discovery that they get when they get star level 5 or some other place. But something to give that a little more juice to it. And so I've got that squared away for that and some other things.
So let's talk about that.
But coming up with all that stuff is, go ahead.
Let's talk about mentees for a second, because that's a great, interesting part of the game.
Sure.
So you have your community. You in your community, you can build up the infrastructure, or you can hold, dinner parties for people. But you also have the townspeople, and you can mentor the townspeople, and each one has a different skill set. Someone's good at mining, or cutting down trees, or building furniture, or whatever the case may be. So you can, mentor the person to teach them how to cut down trees, and then later on, you can spend work papers that you find to assign that person to, while you're fighting, orcs in the forest, they can go and cut down trees or make, chairs or whatever the case may be. And right now, that is under the only way to get them kind of you and them working at the same time, I think, is through the work papers, which last, if I remember, so an hour or 20 minutes? 20 minutes?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. So is there a way, like, I would love to, create this engine of, like, I've spent all this time mentoring these people. Like, I want them just kind of like, constantly, be chopping down wood. I've gotten her to star 5, and now, what? She just automatically chops down some wood, whatever wood I want. And this person, I get them constantly, in the mines once I get them, up to a certain level. Like maybe at level 3, they start collecting really slowly, and level 4 a little faster. Level 5, they're doing a pretty good clip at doing that stuff, so that it creates this engine where I can concentrate on other stuff and higher level stuff while they're kind of collecting those raw resources for me. But right now, as I understand, the you mentor them, and then you can they get better. The higher stars they have, the more they can collect in that 20 minutes that you spend a work paper on them. And the work papers are just drops that happen from doing activities. I don't think I've seen work papers being able to be purchased by a trader or anything. I think you can only get them.
No, that'd be cool. Let's see. So that was mentees being able to work for stuff. I think that my first hit on that is that the mentees are part of the community, so they'd work for the community, not the player.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely, you could incorporate something there that would be cool, like more like community, like buildings that you don't build but maybe only get built by the mentors, the mentees stuff after they've been trained. Like they can then go and build stuff on their own that benefits everyone, which of course just means the player, but from a gameplay standpoint feels more fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot to do there. Like, again, with only 20 minutes, actually right now I'm just I'm doing some mentee training while I'm doing this interview, just to kill some time doing it.
Yeah.
But like, even if you could get work papers where, like, right, well, some of the work papers are for 20 minutes, some of them are for an hour, some of them are for 3 hours, just to have different levels. Because if I could get somebody going something for 3 hours while I do some other stuff, like, now I'll spend some time mentoring those people. You know what I mean? But with such a short 20 minutes,
that's great.
I don't tend to use it that much, because I'm just kind of, like, all right, well, what are they going to collect? Like 400 wood? I don't know. And I also always feel like, I can't get work papers on my own. I just get them through random drops. So I'm kind of like a little shy to spend them as well. You know what I mean?
Right.
because I don't even know how they just drop every once in a while doing something, and I don't know when I'm going to get them or not get them. So uh, if I do, I could build a steady, you know, get, or even if I knew I was going to get a work paper, you get two work papers at the start of every day or something like that. At least I would know there's something coming in.
Yeah, or maybe like just a rare drop or a specific trader who would have them in stock.
Yeah, yeah, or have
Although
popular
I
ones.
really like the idea of higher level work orders for like longer times.
Oh, I
That
would love that.
Yeah, because I'm always looking for more stuff to unlock. Although it is kind of a problem. I did most of the testing on how long stuff takes like a year, maybe a year and a half ago at this point, and the game's gotten much faster since then.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, there
nobody
is
seems to
something.
complain about the game getting faster. So,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I was in those deep woods trying to get that Sasquatch painting to drop forever,
yes. Well,
forever.
okay, combat hasn't gotten much faster. That's a harder one.
And the actual Sasquatch that you have to defeat. I spent a long time there, but then when I got the potion manager and I got the hunter's potion, I just got like 25 of those, and I just had that automatically go and left it overnight. And when I woke up in the morning, I had it. So that one didn't work. That one worked out pretty good, but I don't think the hunter's potion works on getting the Sasquatch art because it's not a special
No,
enemy.
not the art. It should work on the Sasquatch though.
Yeah. That's what I figured. So I didn't use the potion for the art, but yeah, that took forever to drop. That was painful.
Yeah, and there is a reroll on that art too. When an art drops, it first picks which art it is, and if it's an art you already have, it'll pick one more time to try and help out a
Interesting.
little bit.
Yeah, that's great. But yeah, that was that's another one that was just really great. When I went into that art and I was like, oh, let me look at it, and found out like, oh, you can clean the art. There's an image behind it, and then find out there was a whole bunch of special recipes that you can
Yeah,
find doing that. Like I thought, that's really cool. That's just that's thinking outside the box and creating something that's kind of fun and nifty to explore. So I really appreciated that part of the game.
yeah,
And
that was actually the big reason for that was I wanted to introduce another hint for where the Sasquatch was.
so how is that a hint? Tell me more, because it's in two different locations. One's in the deep woods and one is in the hidden grove, right?
The woodland arts are arts of the uh, deep forest enemies.
Oh, I gotcha. So yeah, I gotcha. So you would suddenly get a Sasquatch and realize, wait, there must be another enemy there.
Yes.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, and they're cool. Well, again, I don't know if I'm giving stuff away, but like you have the rose tinted glasses too that let you see where some enemies are that you normally wouldn't see that they're there, right? That's the purpose of
Yep.
those rose tinted glasses. So yeah, there's some.
They show something else too, but I don't
Well,
know that most people have found it.
I'll talk to you about that offline. You can give me the
Well,
secret's good.
you may have found it. The button is just labeled for voiceover users because it is always present, which is a hard thing to do.
Is it a weapon?
Yes.
Okay. I'll talk to you offline. I think I found it because I was like, what the heck is this doing here? I don't understand. I thought it was like a glitch,
Yeah,
but maybe
it's you can't really hide a button from voiceover users, so
right. Yeah, so I think I know what you're talking about. All right, so I don't like it sounds like at least a year you've been working. I mean, how long have you been working on this game?
probably closer to 2 years with a short break in the middle to make another game, kind of just to get experience with the publishing side of things because
Mhm.
there's a lot of moving pieces and
Sure.
getting published on the Play Store and the App Store and having all your ducks in a line for that.
Right. Do you do this like is that what you did full time for 2 years, or is it a side hustle, or
No, now it is uh, something I work on pretty much full time,
okay?
and I would like to continue doing that. And so far it's doing well enough. Not it's not a viral sensation, but it's doing well better than I thought it would do. So
Well, let me ask you this question. So you can play the game for free. There's some in-game transactions that'll, give you, special equipment or stuff like that. And so, I'm always kind of like, I don't know, like, I guess I'm always just like, let me just pay $3.99 for the game, and then I pay for the game, and that's it. Um, but
Perfect.
do you find people who are, that the not even microtransaction, but the in-game transaction is you actually draw people in who are playing for free, and then they're like, oh, well, I would like to buy some potions and move this along faster. Oh, look at that set of royal armor. I would love to just have that, and then go spend that, like that in-game transaction, and by drawing them in for free, that you actually get more through that in-game transaction. Like how do you know not to just charge $3.99 or go in-game transaction, and what's going to actually generate you some money? Because again, you spent 2 years of your life doing this. You should be paid for
Sure.
putting together a good game. Like how do you make that decision, or how do you get advice of how to do that, or you just do a stab in the dark and pray for the best?
Lots of research, reading lots of different people's opinions on it, and then kind of coming up with what you think. And for me, it's a $5 game that people can play for free if they want to. And one of the big reasons that I think free games should be chosen is just because you can share them with your friends. Like I can tell my friends and family, like, here's this thing I made. It's free. You can try it. Like,
Right.
And that's really meaningful to me personally to be able to do that. But also from the point of view of making money, I think it's the right decision, because on mobile, it kind of feels like the only decision. I mean, I've read a few people, maybe it was Grumpy Rhino, I read some company about no, it was Ironhide, I think. Anyway, they had both, and they found that they made a lot more money on the free-to-play games. And I think the reason for that is because with microtransactions, you're allowed to give the people who want to spend money, a little opportunity to spend some more money, which before the game launched, so there's the royal chest is a microtransaction that's in the game that has 6 items in it that are also available through the shadow broker in the game. So you don't have to buy them from the shop. They're also available in game. But there's, every once in a while, there's somebody that just buys all 6. And I'm like, this is great. That's not me in a mobile game, but I'm glad I put this target in here so that person could, show their appreciation for the game in that way. While I still get to maintain the $5 for the full experience for everyone else,
I mean, I think, again, it's free. So again, any of the stuff, I have not, as of yet, spent any money, because I always try in playing the game to review the game. I want to see, like, well, can you play this game without spending money or not? Like that's part of the review process,
sure.
Right? Which you totally can play. You can play this whole game. I'm well deep into it. I have not spent any money. I'm utilizing the traders really well and selling goods and buying goods, and got thousands and thousands of currency in the game. But as I looked at the shop and said, well, what is there? I think you could create even more things. So just like, here is for 99 cents, you get 24 hours double XP, you know what I mean? Or,
Sure.
here is a basket of, just make it random, like it'll generate some random supplies, 200 of 5 random supplies, and you kind of pay 99 cents, and you're not quite sure what you're going to get, but you're going to get 1,000 of something. Do it that, like, so there's like even more things that I think you could put in there for those people who want to spend money, who kind of want to move it along, who don't have the patience I have to sit there and wait. I think there's a lot more.
Sure. I saw some chatter in the Discord too about people wanting to be able to spend money on something more meaningful than just a transient item.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there's some of the first reviews for the game were just like, it has microtransactions and ads. This is bad. So it's funny and very nice to see the other side of that, where people are like, we would like more things to spend money on. Please give us an opportunity to spend money.
Well, again, so those are people who I don't think played the game, right? There are people who,
No, no,
it's the pay to play, right? Like, oh, I can't beat this game unless I, buy a coin every 90 seconds. I got to spend 99 cents to keep going. Like that's not what this game is. Again, you can play this whole game and not spend a dime, which is, as I said, what I've done thus far. Um, but I think, having a shop where it's like, you want to spend this money, you want to get the, royal armor right away, fine, go pay $2 and go get it. You can do that,
exactly.
or you can grind and you can get it the old-fashioned way and spend your ancient coins and buy, which is all in-game stuff. So I'm pro, having even more choices. Again, you're not forcing anyone to buy anything. Like to either go and do it the old-fashioned way of collecting it, or you can go and be like, oh, I'm sick of trying to gather to get the 10 pearls. Let me just go in here and buy 10 pearls or whatever. I mean,
Oh gosh, that'd be a funny one. Yeah.
yeah. And it even had that a little bit like they like one of the missions. Like I think the only way that you can beat the mission is you have to buy the item from the trader, right? You can't. It's the COD. Like I don't think there is COD in the game. You have to
It
buy it from the trader, right?
it is available from one of the arm arrangement people drops it.
When one of the enemies drops it.
Hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, there you
But
go.
the trading is the easier way to get it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just
But
bought
it's
it.
not available through fishing. That's true.
Right. Is there? First off, for those who do decide to play this game, I highly recommend you join the Discord. There's lots of people who are giving good advice, and you find out different things that you can do in the game. I've learned a lot about what's possible in the game through the Discord, so I highly recommend that you join it and keep tabs on it. But in watching the Discord, there is a lot of people saying like, "What about multiplayer? What about being able to chat with other people or trade with other people?" Um, is that something that is you're considering, or just that's not what this game is? So no, or what are your thoughts on multiplayer
Uh,
components or interaction?
a little of column A, little of column B. I don't want to do a server. I don't want accounts. There are, if you have player accounts, if you have player data, if you have any of that stuff, it's a whole new can of worms. If I'm responsible for any of that thing. So there's no, and really, it really simplifies things, because there's all these different statements you have to make to Apple and Google, especially around privacy. And I can say that I don't collect anything at all because there's just nothing to collect.
Right.
Now the advertisers do collect information. So if you're getting ads, then there's some information being transmitted, and a lot of people don't realize that includes your location, approximate location, and the reason for that is that advertisers won't advertise to someone if they don't know where they are.
Right.
Starbucks doesn't want to advertise where there's not Starbucks locations,
Right.
and so on and so forth. So a lot of people will see that the game collects locations, and that's why that is. But me, grounded games, I don't see any data from anyone unless you send it to me.
So speaking of that of the advertisements, so the advertisements really like for me, they come in where I've been offline. It says, do you want to, again, gives me the choice. Do you want to watch an advertisement to double your production while you're offline? And so I always say yes to kind of do that. Now, typically, or usually, or historically, whatever you want to say, when an ad went on for a voiceover user, it tended to be inaccessible. Like trying to find how to close that or get out of that, often was a big problem. In yours, it says, rewards granted, and right underneath that is a close button. And I don't know if that was something you did special because it works very smoothly and nicely, or if that just happened to be, whoever you contracted with, it was already set up that way. So did you add any accessibility around the advertisements, or is it just working fine without you having to do anything special to it?
If it's on the advertisement itself, that'd be handled by AdMob, which would be third party. Though it's kind of AdMob is Google and Flutter is Google, so they're kind of in the same space, and I feel like Flutter does a pretty good job by default of hitting accessibility.
Gotcha.
And so I'm not surprised to hear that they do that in the ads thing as well. But that's really good to know, because I've been wondering what that's like.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like where, watch this advertisement, get double the bonus, and a lot of times, the blind or visually impaired community can't, like, I'm not even going to touch this advertisement because I'm gonna get locked in here, and I'm not gonna be able to get out. I'm gonna have to shut down the whole app, and it's a hassle. So you don't
Oh
even
my
bother.
gosh, can only imagine.
Yeah, and it's even worse when the advertisements are forced on you as opposed to you choosing them, right? When it's forced on you and then you get stuck, it's even worse. So, but I always try it out because, again, for reviewing a game, I want to know, can you actually engage in this part of the game of watching the advertisements, getting the bonuses, and was very pleased that I think once I ran into an issue where I got stuck and had to shut it down. But I mean, I've been playing literally 24 hours a day for a month, so I mean, it's really.
I would wonder if that was a Unity ad. It uses so the app has two ad sources. It's AdMob, which is Google, and then Unity Ads, which is Unity. And I wonder if maybe Unity is not as good.
Yeah, could be.
Because I think it's like 90+% of my fills are AdMob.
Yeah, there is something
also,
different about
ads.
the ad.
Yeah, ad sourcing in general was a whole can of worms. I mean, the like top apps on the Play Store and App Store have like 1,000 app or ad providers. It's crazy. I don't do that. It is a wild world under there.
So when I'm watching one of those ads, right? So the other thing I always figure, well, if I'm watching this ad, this is helping Ben out somehow. I don't know how exactly, but do you get like a penny every time somebody watches an ad, or I mean, is it 5 cents? Like, what is the monetization around ads, or do they give you a flat fee just for having the people be able to access that, or is it per watch?
I wonder if it shows me here. Let's see. Okay, I think that's per thousand. I think that's like $15 per 1,000 ads. Okay. Is if I'm interpreting that right. Let's see. Okay. Effective cost per 1,000 impressions. And I would assume cost means to them, because I'm not paying to show ads, obviously.
So what is that?
But so that's what it is currently. But it ends
like
up
1.5
like,
cents.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that sounds right. So it's not a lot, but it adds up.
Yeah. No,
I mean, it's enough to buy a sandwich every day.
Do you know how many active users are on the game right now?
No.
No way to tell that.
Nope. I know how many downloads there are and that sort of stuff, with better numbers than are on the app stores, but there's nothing. The only server connections in the game is to get tide data, and then to check if there's a crash report, and you send it in. Or if there's a crash, I think it sends it to me, period. So then that would be the other server connection. And that's go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, you were kind of talking about this. It's like, how do you? I mean, this is a good game. It's really an enjoyable game. I recommend people who particularly like resource management games or RPG types of games. I mean, it's a fun game to play. Really occupies your time and has a lot of content that can last you a long time to play. But how are you? You put it out there, but like, how do you get attention to it? Are you just crossing your fingers and hoping? Are you doing Google ads? Are you trying to get on podcasts? Like, what are you doing to try to get the name of this game out there for people to play it? Because again, it's a good game. I think people would enjoy playing it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't done as much as I should. I'm sure that's true. What started out is I made the game. It probably took a year, kind of working off and on to get a beta ready, and it had the bottom 8 skills. So no house, no construction, enchanting, or community.
Right.
And then I posted that on the Incremental Games subreddit, and it got a bunch of attention, and people told me they liked it and all that's good stuff. And that was really when I knew that there was fit for the game. It was when people liked it there. And then I've, got enough people in a beta and they started telling me stuff. And then that kind of went on for about a year. And it's just really, the active engagement of other people lets me know that this is working. Doing this interview, talking to people on Discord. I emailed somebody back this morning. It's just all this action, all these people who like the game is really what makes it happen. I think there's a lot of the good parts of this game that were suggested by somebody else. And, it's just me providing the service, of bringing that into reality. Which
can you do things, I don't know if this is server based or if this is, again, just trying to think of ways to draw people in, keep people in. Can you do things like, all right, well, here is a seasonal location. Like, so for the fall, we have, the pumpkin patch, and you get to fight enemies in the pumpkin patch, and you might drop a special weapon out of the pumpkin patch. And then when fall is over, it's, the winter wonderland, and you fight in the winter wonderland, and maybe you get
that's a cool idea.
Ice sword or something like that, and it only lasts for that long. And, you want to get something from the pumpkin patch. Well, you got to come back next year and, fight in that. So kind of create these events or, unique things to draw people back, into the game and constantly checking it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's definitely something I've been thinking about a little bit as well. We saw the larches up in northern Washington recently, which are deciduous pine trees. So they drop their needles, and before they drop their needles, they turn bright yellow. And we went and saw those, and that's something that I would really like to put in the game, but specifically as a thing that happens like when people should go see the larches.
Right.
Because I think that connection to like this thing that's outside the game is really cool and a thing that I like to provide.
Yeah, like maybe that only opens up at a certain time where you get to cut those trees down and then, be able to craft something special out of those things that only come around, certain times of the year. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And that, like, if you decide to do that, if you decide to be like, all right, well, for this 2 months, we're going to put in a special location that's, whatever, the winter wonderland, as I said, is that easy to push on and have in the app for 2 months and then shut it down? Is that like just an update to Apple? Is it like how easy or hard is it to, do that sort of thing?
Let's see, the time gating of it would be, I don't think it'd be too difficult. You'd just tie it to, the whatever the clock says the time is. The part about getting it to Apple, I mean, you'd have to make sure it's in there, and then as long as you get the update out in time, you'd be in good shape.
So you could, like, in theory, put out to Apple like, hey, here's a whole year's worth of events that are timestamped to go on and off. And you really only have to submit that to Apple once. You wouldn't have to submit that every time one is coming on or off.
Oh, well, is your question more in regards to Apple promoting the event or having the event in the game?
If you're putting new content, I imagine you have to, tell Apple like, I'm updating the game for new content, right?
Yeah.
And so, and it takes them a while to whatever they do, QC or whatever they do to make sure that's fine. But with the way that you would do that, instead of doing that like every 2 months, telling Apple you have a new location, would you say, I've just created 6 locations and, each one happens every 2 months, and in the game, there's some timestamp that says this one closes on January 1st and this one opens on January 1st. And it kind of does it that way, so that you don't have to keep informing Apple of changes or new locations in the game.
Yeah, they're not that strict about needing to know what happened. So I think that, I mean, the line for that would be the same, that it would show up for the players. It'd be like, there's seasonal events now.
Yeah.
And that would be sufficient. But I mean, they might, I don't know what tests they do behind the scenes, but I would say there's seasonal events now, and then push it through and they'd say, great.
Gotcha. Yeah, seasonal events would be cool, because then you could, get yourself some special weapon, special piece of armor, or a special ring or something. I mean, I think that'd be really cool.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's plenty of, I used to feel that there wasn't a lot of room left to explore, and kind of the game space, I guess. But I've given up on that because I've always found something else to put in or to do. So there's plenty left. I'll find it.
Well, again, really love the game. I really appreciate you taking the time to give us some insight and background on how you created the game and your thoughts around monetization and things like that. Like I said, particularly for those who are blind and visually impaired, who like resource management games and RPG types of games, this is a really fun game. Occupies a good amount of time. You can play it for several months. And get to all the content, maybe even longer, because I'm a good solid month in, and I'm between level 50 and 70 on each of the skills, and I know they go even higher than that. So might take me even longer on the back end. But really fun game. Ben has done a great job of incorporating things to make it more accessible, even over the month that 5 weeks that I've been playing. So feel free to get on that Discord, and if you see something, mention to him. And he's been very responsive up to this point, and I'm sure he will continue.
Yes, please do.
So, Ben, if you do come out with new content or a whole series of updates that you want to share with the community, feel free to join the Facebook group. You can always just post right out there and let people know. Or if you want to come back on the interview series, we'd love to have you back and tell us about all the new things that you're up to. We would love to hear about it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And
again,
especially thank you for the equip storage bag from inventory note. That's happening. I'm excited for that.
Excellent. I got loads of ideas. I'm full of ideas. If you haven't noticed already.
Good.
I'm full of them. All right. Well, thank you so much. Really a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, thanks.